Hi friends, my name's Allie Chambers and I'm a wedding photographer here in the Nashville area, and I'm going to be showing you all the equipment that I use on a wedding day. Now, there's a little bit of change that has happened, and that is that I have gone down to using one camera body and one lens. I have a separate video about the 28-70, the new Canon RF lens. Pretty much all of these lenses that I would take on a wedding day has been replaced by this new lens, this chunk of a lens. I'm going to be doing a whole separate video on that, but I did want to give that discrepancy that there are some things that I will talk about that I previously used on wedding days and now it has been replaced by this bad boy. Starting first with cameras. As I mentioned before, I shoot on the Canon R6, which is a mirrorless camera. I've loved the R6. It has been absolutely incredible. If you are a Canon user and you have had lenses that are not adaptable to the RF bodies, I also have this control ring, so I can use all of my prior lenses on this body if I need to. The other camera that I would have in my bag is the Canon 5D Mark IV. I have shot most of my career on the Mark IV, so it has definitely been a different change of pace going to the Canon R6, but the Mark IVs have been incredible. I'm actually filming this video on a Mark IV right now. Honestly, from this point forward, I'm just going to be talking about everything through the lens of using the R6. This is pretty much my primary camera at this point. I'm not using the Mark IVs a ton, just because I love the way that the R6 has been treating me recently. Let's talk about lenses. This is the part of photography that, in my opinion, gets so expensive, but it's also a lot more timeless. Camera bodies can change so quickly. I was shooting on Mark IVs for my first 3 to 4 years in photography, and now I'm just shooting on the R6 body, which changes my lens setup just a little bit because now I'm shooting on the RF lens. I can have this lens for a really long time and it will adapt to different camera bodies, but this is where things can get a little pricey in photography. Like I said, I now have one lens that replaces most of these, so I haven't been using them a ton. The last 3 weddings that I've shot, I've just shot on this one camera lens, and that is a separate video for the 28-70 2.0. Yeah, 2.0. My usual setup, let's just go through it. My Canon 35mm 1.4. This is my baby, okay? I love this lens so much. It has been so good. I love it for group shots. It works really great for wedding portraits. It works great for wedding party portraits. It also works great outside of weddings. I think that it just really flatters people really well, and I'm a big fan of it. I love shooting on this thing. It has been replaced by the new lens, but whenever I'm shooting on my Mark IVs, this is my go-to if I don't have this lens with me. Moving on to the next portrait style lens that I use. This is a Canon 50mm 1.2. I love this lens so much. The term nifty 50 definitely applies, in my opinion, to my business because the 50 focal length is just so classic. It's great for portraits. It's great for honestly everything. If I'm traveling and I have to pick one lens prior to this lens, my 50 would be my go-to. I just love it. I know that you can't get as wide on it, but I think that it just does a lot of beautiful things, and being able to go down to 1.2 is so special. So I love this lens. The Canon 135. You either love it or you hate it, or you have no opinion on it. I love it. I've had a lot of fun with it. It's not as versatile as I wish that it was. It worked great in every year prior to 2020 when really big weddings were happening and I felt comfortable staying on this length. Right now I'm shooting more on my 70-200, which I didn't ever think would be something that I'd say again, but I really loved shooting on that lens again. I had a photographer friend of mine that they shoot mostly on their 70-200. Laura Allen, thank you. It's kind of rekindled this love that I have for the 70-200, and I just don't appreciate how fixed of a lens this is and how tight it is too. But it is a beautiful lens. You'll get some amazing bokeh in the background. It's fine. You know, it's fine. I keep it in my bag. I also keep it in my bag in case a second shooter ever wants to use it. So they're always welcome to use this if they don't have something that goes further than an 85, but that's really why I keep this in my bag. I'm literally going to support this with this hand because this is a heavy, heavy, heavy lens. This is the Canon 70-200 2.8 IS2 USM. That's a lot of letters. I had to make sure that I got that right. I have actually just now come back around to loving this lens. This has not always been a thing for me because it is so heavy. I'm kind of at a point in my career where I am really coming to appreciate versatility in lenses. I feel like I'm not missing as many moments because I'm able to move my focal length rather than having to run somewhere to try to get closer. And I just don't always love the look of cropping in. So I've learned to really come to love this lens. And comparing it to the 135, they're just so different. So when I shoot at 135, if I go all the way down to 2.0, it's beautiful. I feel like I can get a similar look with the 70-200 at 2.8, which is as low as this goes, but I feel like that's more than enough for what I need, especially shooting at that focal length. It's great for ceremonies. That's usually the only time that I use it. I did mention earlier that I'm only shooting on the R6 with my 28-70 on it. And with this one, I'm popping it on to a Mark IV, and I'm really just using it to get those really, really tight shots of rings being exchanged. Past that, I'm not really using this a ton on a wedding day, but it is nice to have that versatility. And then after I'm done with the ceremony, this thing goes back in the bag because I do not want this on my shoulders with my harness on. So this goes immediately. The last lens that I'm going to mention is actually the lens that I am using to record this video right now. It is the Canon 24-70 2.8. 2.8 has always just felt a little too high for me. It's not my favorite lens, but it is my favorite lens for dance floors. For receptions, I love the way that flash works with that. So I'm very happy with the 24-70, keeping it in my bag, and I really just only use it in those contexts. I usually have a lot of people ask why I don't have an 85 because I feel like that's the one thing in the wedding portrait lenses that I don't have. I don't have an 85 because I am usually shooting with a second shooter and they usually have an 85. So I'd rather have some different variety on focal lengths when I'm working with a second shooter so that I can be getting a lot of those tight shots, getting a lot of the interactive things. If I need to fix a hair that I'm seeing because I'm the primary shooter, I want to be as close as possible, and shooting on closer lengths works great. I'd rather just have my second shooters on an 85, and 90% of the time they do have an 85. So that's one thing that I didn't put in this whole thing because I don't have one, but an 85 does make a great portrait lens, wedding lens. We love the 85. Now, let's talk about flashes. This is the Canon 600 flash. I have two of these. I did not feel like digging it out of my photography closet, so I only have one right now. I love these flashes. I haven't used anything other than the 600s. The 600s has been the only flash series that I've used, and I think they work great. Another flash that I have is the Yongnuo, I think is how you say this. I could be saying that so wrong. I love these too. I usually am doing most of my work with the Canon 600s. You could also use these, they've been great to me. I usually just use these flashes that are not Canon whenever I'm needing multiple lighting throughout a room, or if I'm going to put one on a flash stand. I am much more comfortable putting the non-Canon flashes on a flash stand and putting them into a corner, because if this hits the ground, it's gonna break my heart a whole lot less than if this hits the ground. If I have to choose one, I'm choosing this one through and through. I do have flash stands that I take with me. I'll also take a white umbrella with me in case I need to be able to use flash for portraiture, or if I'm just doing something a little bit more creative. With flash stands, always taking sandbags with me, making sure that they're steady, making sure that somebody's not gonna knock them over. So that is my wedding setup. I'm gonna go ahead and give a little precursor to the 28-70. Like I said, I am just shooting on one camera body right now when I shoot a wedding, which is so wild. I have moved to this approach mainly out of back pain. I would take my camera harness and have, you know, either my R6 and a Mark IV or a Mark IV and a Mark IV. And the weight of having two camera bodies and two lenses after standing for, you know, 8+ hours, it just was not working for me. This has been such a game changer. It has its flaws, but for the most part, it's an incredible lens and I absolutely love it. That is all that I use on a wedding day. I don't really take a ton of styling elements to weddings. I don't usually do the big setup that a lot of photographers will do. I sometimes have a couple of things in my bag to make things pretty. I also will sometimes have second shooters that will bring those kits, and I'm totally welcome to them using them. But I am a lot more about creating detailed portraits and having these moments that are not as staged. I feel like anytime I look back at wedding photos where there was a styling board involved, it didn't fit the rest of the gallery. So I'd much rather shoot those detail portraits in areas that feel like the wedding day. That's really all that I take. I take a lot of snacks and I take a lot of water, and I'll usually take a liquid IV with me too because it's Tennessee and it is hot, 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 hot here in the summer, and it makes me want to cry most days. Yeah, that's my setup for weddings, and I hope this is helpful. For a lot of my newer photographers, if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out what lenses I should buy, I don't really know what camera bodies I should buy, maybe start with something more versatile. If you want to try the 24-70, try the 24-70. You could really get away with using a zoom lens and a wider lens and be okay for a wedding day. Whenever I first got started in photography, I rented a lot of my equipment because equipment is expensive and it adds up very quickly, and not everybody just has the cash on hand to be able to make that happen. So I was using a lot of my proceeds that I was making from weddings to be able to fund paying for my equipment and then also being able to buy it out whenever I was ready to. If you are local to Tennessee, Lens Rentals is absolutely outstanding for renting equipment. I've never had an issue with them. I've been super happy with how quickly they get my equipment to me, and being local, I do have the option to go pick it up in person, but they do ship all across the country. But if you want to be able to use Lens Rentals for the first time and you've never used it, if you've got a wedding coming up or you've got a shoot coming up, try Lens Rentals. I can get you $25 off your first time using it. So that link will be down here and you can click on it and get $25 off your first lens rental. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope that this is helpful. I cannot wait to see what you create. In the comments below, let me know if you have a favorite lens, favorite camera body that you've explored. I'd love to hear what you're shooting on. I'd love to hear what you're enjoying in your photography business. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.